His disciple was trying to drive a wedge between Celestial Master Yu and me. At that time, she was in a relationship with Tianjie, but she secretly came and seduced me. Fortunately, her disguise could not fool me. I tried to warn Tianjie, however, he had been blinded by her. I could only pretend to be trapped. Tianjie was jealous, and when it was the right time, I exposed the woman in front of Tianjie, and then I killed her. Tianjie has never fallen in love with any woman since then but has also kept a grudge against me. He often wanted to retaliate just to make things difficult for me. I was also quite bored with how smooth things were going, so I have been his enemy for years. It's actually easier to train him than to be his friend. Tianjie was not as gifted as the other 3 Heaven's Gift disciples, but after fighting with me for years, his skills had improved very quickly. Now, he's far better than the other 3, but still cannot beat me. Gu Shijio was speechless. Di Fui, how much free time did you have? Finally, she understood the story behind Tianjiu's hatred for him. Others might not know the inside story. They thought that Di Fui was the one who stole Tianjiu's lover away, and that was why they had been enemies for so many years. Gu Shijio proceeded to subconsciously caress Di Fui's chest. Di Fui, in fact, you are a bad guy. You are not a good person. Her soft fingers poked on his chest. He felt an itchy sensation but grew notably excited. His eyes somehow seemed wider as he chuckled. Stupid! How can I be a good person and sit in this position? You are so naive, baby. Gu Shijio understood that to break through the encirclement of the wolves and sit on the chief position, Di Fui would have to do things that were not entirely proper or ethical. This guy was actually quite unscrupulous, but with good intention. Gu Shijio was still pondering over the newly found information. She was still learning on his chest. After a moment, Di Fui spoke. Baby, you are playing with fire. Huh? Gu Shijio looked at him in surprise. However, she quickly reacted because she felt the most honest reaction of a man tingle somewhere near her thighs. She coughed and was about to move away from him, but he buckled her up. His palms buckled her back, and he pulled her head down. He then kissed her and whispered, Baby, since you are not tired, we can go another round. What? Another round? What kind of physical strength did this man possess? Gu Shijio quickly pushed him away. No, I am tired. I want to sleep. Di Fui did not let her go. That's fine, you don't have to move this time. Let me do it. I am worried about your health. Your physical strength will be exhausted. The kind of activities they were doing could have easily killed normal people purely from exhaustion. What he had to do now was to preserve his strength. Di Fui touched her nose. If that is the case, this time you go above me and you control everything? Gu Shijio was speechless. Di Fui did not wait for her approval and proceeded to initiate the proposed activity. Gu Shijio initially thought that this wedding night was just an ordinary night. She never expected that it would bring her repeated priceless ecstasy. They were practically busy the entire night. When Di Fui was finally satisfied, it was already late at night. She did not speak to him anymore because she was exhausted and asleep. She lied on his arms and slept like a pig. No matter how he pushed her, she would not wake up. Di Fui observed Gu Shijio as she slept. He would never get bored of looking at her. Time passed very quickly. The most valuable asset in this world was time. No matter how reluctant one was, time would still pass us by. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. Many things happened in the past 2 months. For example, Lan Weihu and Yan Chen had finally gotten married. Gu Shijio and Di Fui personally became their witnesses, which made them absolutely delighted. Of course, their wedding was also very sensational and lively. Yan Chen's parents initially thought that their son would inform them when he got married. They also expected that he would come and invite them personally. After all, when a couple got married, they still needed the blessing from their parents. As a result, they waited until the eve of their son's wedding. Unfortunately, Yan Chen did not go and invite them. In fact, they did not even receive an invitation card. Mrs. Yan was furious and very disappointed with her son. On the other hand, Mr. Yan was angry with his wife instead. He had been very cold to her and had avoided going home. He preferred to stay with his concubine. Out of frustration, Mrs. Yen went straight to Yen Chen's newly built mansion. She thought that her son would meet her at the very least. After all, she did raise him and gave birth to him. Unlike Little Fox, who even benefited of her generosity. Fortunately, she did not want to mess up her son's wedding this time. After all, Lan Wei, who came from the Blue Fox family and was very helpful to her son. However, she still wanted to let Lan Wei know who was the head of the family. She was her mother-in-law, so she must have the authority. At the very least, Little Fox should respect her. This was the wishful thinking of Mrs. She was prepared to make an effort to make it happen, even if she needs to play the victim and act in front of her son. What she did not expect was, when she finally arrived at her son's house, she was not even able to enter the house. It was easy to attend Yen Chin and Little Fox's wedding, as long as the guests came with an invitation card. Otherwise, the doorman would never let them in. She was so angry that she clarified her identity and asked the doorman to go in and report it. As a result, after the doorman went in as instructed, he came out a moment later and gave Mrs. Yen 200 ingot and asked her to go back home. With this, Yen Chen made it clear that he did not want to see her and would not allow her to attend his wedding with Lan Weihu. Mrs. Yen did not expect that her son would be so cruel. It seemed that he was determined to cut ties with her. She was thinking of causing a scene at the entrance. However, she also cared about her image. If everyone knew that she was rejected to attend her son's wedding, she would not have face to stay in the Yan's residence in the future. She had no choice but to go away. It was at this moment that she realized the consequence of the mistake she had made. She would never be forgiven. Initially, she thought that her son was just mad at her. However, she now knows that this will not be resolved anytime soon. It was very likely that she would lose this son. Gu Shijiao and Di Fui did not stay too long at the wedding. Their time was extremely precious. Gu Shijiao was still busy searching for a way to extend Di Fui's life. Unfortunately, she had almost exhausted all her resources. No one had a way. She even ignored Di Fui's order and tried to find the madman. It turned out that he was really just a man who had lost his mind. What kind of experience was it to watch the closest person you love walk step by step to death while being too helpless to do anything about it? Weak people would probably collapse into depression merely out of fear. Even Gu Shijiao was getting more and more anxious every passing day. Fortunately, Di Fui still looked the same. He was still young and handsome, full of energy. However, the big star that represented him was already dull and crumbling. It looked like it could fall at any time. Di Fui had just recently taught her about stargazing in the past month. It was extremely complicated. It was not just about observing the constellation or brightness of the stars. Through stargazing, one could see the rise and fall of a dynasty, as well as the fate of significant people. It was not something that could be learned overnight. Although Di Fui did not have much time, he had to make sure that Gu Shijiao picked up all the skills she needed. Thus, he delayed the teaching until now. He expected that Gu Shijiao would spend a lot of time watching the stars in the future. The more she watched, the more nervous she got. The more she looked at it, the more desperate she was. This was not unlike a situation where a person discovers that a terrible fate lies before them. They would choose to live differently and enjoy whatever time they have remaining. However, if that fate were to befall on their loved one instead, he or she would be very anxious and restless. It would only get worse with each passing day. Gu Shijiao was now in this situation. The more she looked at the astrological map, the more uneasiness and fear she had. The pressure she had was enough to make her breathless. Upon observing the crumbling king star, she was dying to fly up to hold it or support it from underneath. After she learned astrology, she finally realized that the fall of the stars was irreversible and she did not have any method to change Di Fui's fate. She also talked about the condition with the occasional voice in her head. She begged her to show mercy. She could even transfer her remaining life to Di Fui if that were allowed. However, the messenger from the upper bound just sighed. It had to advise her to give up. Perhaps it was better just to cherish the time they had left together. Gu Shijio realized that she could not sleep well anymore. In fact, sometimes she could not even go to bed. The pain that she was about to endure from losing her beloved could not be described. On a scale, it was probably 100 times more painful than losing a relationship. Of course, she did not want to add too much psychological pressure to Di Fui. On the surface, she still showed a relatively calm look, except for the fact that she was getting thinner. After all, Di Fui could not do anything about his fate either. Although he looked the same, his energy level had been falling of late, and he began to feel easily tired. If he had nothing to be concerned with, he would accept this fact very calmly. After all, he had lived for nearly 10,000 years, and he had already seen everything there was to see. He did not care about life and death. However, now he had someone in his heart. He was eager for her warmth. He could not bear to leave her alone. He did not want her to be in pain. He was the one who caused the most pain for her, so he felt guilty even though he could not do anything about it. Needless to say, he could not sleep very well either. He would often wake up in the middle of the night and find Gu Zijia's eyes closed. However, her lashes would be moving ever so slightly, indicating to him that she was just pretending. There was once when he opened his eyes too quickly, so Gu Shijio did not even have time to pretend to be asleep. Both of their teary eyes met each other. Her small hand clasped his robes, and the bottom of her eyes was full of helplessness and fragility. Di Fui's heart felt like a few knives stabbed it. At the moment when their two pairs of eyes met, Gu Shijio subconsciously wanted to close her eyes and pretend to be asleep. However, Di Fui hugged her tightly. He kissed the dark circles under her eyes, and also kissed her tears. "Shijio, we have never been to the upper bound. There are also many things that are still uncertain in this world. Perhaps I might not disappear forever. Maybe I will just go to the upper bound. No matter where I go, I will try my best to come back. Don't be afraid." Gu Shijio had a rare glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Really?" Di Fui kissed her forehead. "Think about it. I didn't know the world you came from, and you are like a miracle. So, there may be a second miracle." All of this sounded good, but Gu Shijio remembered the messenger from the upper bound telling her that there would be no way for Di Fui to come back. However, what Di Fui said also made sense. After all, there were many unknowns in this world. She put her head on his chest and replied, "If there is such a day, you must come back. I will be waiting for you." Di Fui rubbed her head with his chin, and he replied with a heavy voice, "I promise." He lifted her chin with his fingers and kissed her lips. "Can I sleep now?" Gu Shijio responded and closed her eyes. Di Fui massaged her acupuncture point and finally let her really fall asleep. He could not do this regularly as it would affect her health in the long term. There was a little side effect, so if it was not the last resort, Di Fui did not want to use this method. Gu Shijio had not rested for several days. If she continued to be like this, her body would collapse, and her health would deteriorate even further. She could also lose her mind if she lacked sleep. Therefore, based on the current situation, Di Fui made the decision he needed to make. As he looked at Gu Shijio in his arms, he reflected on the past. He had done so many plans and used so many methods to get to this point. He even broke up with her in the way of betrayal, just to prevent her from experiencing the suffering that she is facing today. He never expected that his plans would change so fast. In the end, she would still suffer this consequence despite everything he had done to prevent it. He even let Gu Shijio die. If he could turn back the time, he would rather have never provoked her. But time could not be turned back. There was some evil in the air tonight. Gu Shijio had a long dream. In her dream, she is walking into a sea of flames, surrounded by fire mountains. It looked like the flaming mountains in the novel Journey to the West. There was a raging fire that seemed to be erupting from the ground. Gu Shijio was with the muscle and Lu Wu. With the blessings of the muscle and Lu Wu, she did not feel too hot even though she was walking in a flame. She didn't know why she was here. She just felt like she was looking for something. After taking a long walk, a purple ocean seemed to appear in front of her. Upon closer observation, she realized that it was a crowded purple mushroom field. There were beautiful purple mushrooms all over the place. However, the mushrooms looked a bit strange. Upon closer observation, the mushrooms looked like the hands that were pinching a spell. Gu Shijio was stunned. Her heart pumped uncontrollably for a moment. Purple cloud mushroom? It was the purple cloud mushroom. According to legend, it could bring one's life back. Its function was comparable to the 9,000-year-old peach that was owned by the Queen Mother of Heaven. If she used it to refine the medicinal herbs and produced a grade 9 pill, it could make an ordinary person immortal. The problem was that this kind of mushroom seemed to have only existed in legends. Gu Shijio had never seen it before. She only saw it in a book of rare herb collections that the firmament stone showed her. She wanted to find this mushroom and try it. However, no one knew where the mushroom grew, and Di Fui had never even heard about it. Gu Shijio had been searching all over the place lately, but it was like finding a needle in a haystack. She did not expect to see it here. Ordinarily, mushrooms grew in cool and humid places, so those were the types of areas that Gu Shijio had searched. She did not expect it to grow next to a volcano. She almost rushed over eagerly to pick it up. However, it seemed that she was unable to take the next step. Suddenly, she woke up. She opened her eyes, and what she saw was Di Fui sitting on the bed and taking down some notes. He sat there at her side. He was holding a pen in his hand and writing a book. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio was hugging one of his thigh like a koala. The two of them were current at the Biwu Palace, the real residence of the Lord, Huang Tu. He brought her here 8 days ago and told her to treat this place as her home. The grass and trees here were all beautiful, and the palace was full of white clouds, like a fairyland. Furthermore, this place was full of spiritual power, so it was an excellent place to recuperate. Di Fui looked pale since a few days ago, but after he was back here, his appearance seemed to have improved. It was a beautiful place, a real paradise on earth. If Gu Zijia's heart were not preoccupied with Di Fui's impending death, she would really fall in love with this place. The scenery here was absolutely beautiful, but those who could enter here must reach at least a level 9 spiritual power, or else they would not be able to manage the amount of spiritual energy present here. Gu Shijio and Di Fui were now in the bedroom in his palace. Gu Shijio was stunned for a moment and finally realized that what she saw was just a dream. She was notably disappointed. Di Fui looked down at her and wondered, "What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? Why are you sweating?" Gu Shijio kept quiet for a moment, but then she suddenly asked him, "Since you are so knowledgeable, do you know a place?" She storied about all the details in her dream. She said it was very detailed, and Di Fui felt that it was strange. "How did you know this place?" Gu Zijia's heart skipped a beat while her eyes widened. "Does this place really exist? Do you know it?" Her voice trembled slightly due to the excitement. Initially, she felt that her dream was surreal. It was probably because she had been looking for the purple cloud mushroom recently, so she would see this in her dreams. Thus, she did not hold much hope. She just casually asked Di Fui and did not expect anything in return. However, it appears that Di Fui actually knew this place. "The morphological scenery you mentioned sounds like a forbidden place." "Which forbidden place?" "Which forbidden place?" "The Buddha Fireland." Di Fui had recently also taught her about the method of entering forbidden places. He also taught her about the rules that needed to be abided there and the characteristics of the area. This was on top of learning about how to read the stars. Gu Shijio could remember a lot of things, but this was the first time she heard of the Buddha Fireland. She changed her position and lied on his lap. "Tell me more." Di Fui did not keep anything to himself and told her everything that he knew. It turned out that this Buddha Fireland was the most underrated place in the 8 forbidden places known to Di Fui. As seen in Gu Zijia's dream, there were fires everywhere. The entire land was bare, and no plants could survive. There was a very strange feature in this place, which is that only women can enter. There was a man who accidentally broke into it before, and he was burnt alive by the flames. Back in the day, Di Fui thought that he was good enough to withstand the heat there, so he tried to enter it. However, he could only last for 15 minutes. In that brief period, he patrolled some of the mountains there and found that there was nothing but fire. He did not see anything else, so he never went in again. Since Gu Shijio suddenly asked him, he seemed to be a little surprised. What made you suddenly ask me about this place? When have you been there? Gu Zijia's heart was racing. She took a deep breath as she responded, I just had a dream. I went to the place in my dream, and then I found the purple cloud mushroom in it. Do you think it was truly the purple cloud mushroom in it? Do you think that God is trying to give me a hint using my dream? Di Fui remained silent. Dreams are often fictitious. Perhaps it is due to your obsession too. Gu Shijio shook her head. No. If it was only my obsession, why would I dream of a place which I never been to before? How would it even be possible? She grasped his hand and continued, I want to go and try my luck. Di Fui frowned. There are some dangers. I have never really explored it. You told me that the fire there was very special and only women are allowed to enter. I am a woman, and I have a high spiritual power. There should not be any danger for me. Gu Zijia's eyes were shining with hope. She could not walk away from the opportunity. Di Fui looked at her and knew that she had made up her mind. He was not able to convince her to let go of the plan. Since she had hope again, she was not as dull as before. Vitality seemed to re-inject it into her body, which brightened her eyes. She seemed to be more energetic as a whole. Di Fui took some time to consider the pros and cons of her next move. It takes at least 5 days to go in and out of the forbidden place. Gu Shijio took a light breath as she responded positively, It is all right. You still have 12 days to live. We should have enough time. Di Fui was worried. I will go with you. Gu Shijio shook her head. Don't. It is more important that you try your best to nurture your body now. You can't afford to diminish your spiritual power. Let me handle everything. Gu Shijio was wide awake now. She sat straight up, dressed up, and got out of bed. How can I go to this forbidden place? I will go now. Di Fui stopped her and rubbed her eyebrows. You are always hustling and bustling. It is not something that can be rushed. I need to prepare you for it. Gu Shijio was anxious. What are you going to do? We do not have much time. We can't waste a single second. Di Fui sighed. Don't worry. It won't delay you for too long. Give me a day. You can't simply rush into that place. You will need to wear special clothes. Also, you need to learn a spell to avoid the fire. Gu Shijio was making a quick risk assessment based on the time Di Fui had left. It took a total of 6 days for the whole process. If she could get the job done faster, she might be able to come out in 4 to 5 days. In this case, she still had sufficient time for other preparations. Since this was the only hope she can grasp today, it is natural to get everything done and fight for success. She firmly believed that this was a message given to her by God. Perhaps she could really save Di Fui through this method. She had been rather down lately, and now she was finally full of energy again. She looked at what Di Fui was writing, and it seemed to be some skills and spells to be practiced. His writing was beautiful, much like himself. Every single line. Mu Feng was next to Gu Shijio. He could hear the conversation between the two lovebirds. He was wondering why Gu Shijio would blush at his master's reasonable request. Gu Shijio did not want to talk to Di Fui anymore, so she switched off the spell. After she thought for a while, she went to find the Muscle and Lu Wu. These two beasts were now at the highest level among all beasts, so they could enter Biwu Palace easily. However, Windcaller could not make it due to its lower spiritual power. Thus Gu Shijio left Windcaller in her residence to assist Luo Zhanyu. The Biwu Palace was heavenly to them. They could practice as much as possible there. When Gu Shijio found them, they were chatting and catching fish in the Linghu Lake. As they saw her coming, they shrank into the water and cautiously greeted her. Master! Gu Shijio looked at the two of them. The Muscle's shell had turned rose gold. It was majestic and dazzling under the daylight. Lu Wu had also returned to its original appearance and was swimming in the water. It had grown into the size of a pony. It occasionally looked like a peacock when its 9 tails were stretched out. Lu Wu's original appearance resembled a human with the face of a tiger which had claws and 9 tails. Its face was beautiful, with big eyes and long eyelashes. Gu Shijio was relieved. After the two of them came to the Biwu Palace, their progress was expeditious. Since Gu Shijio was in a good mood, she greeted the two of them and asked if they had encountered any problems lately. Lu Wu and the muscle looked at each other. The muscle was more courageous, so it asked, "Master, are you in a good mood today?" Gu Shijio raised her eyebrows. "Have I appeared to be in a bad mood lately?" Lu Wu and the muscle nodded in unison. "Master, your recent mood has been terrible." These days, their owner either did not even see them. When she did, she would tell them for their slow progress. Moreover, it was getting rare to see their owner smile. She would only barely smile when she was with Di Fui. On a usual day, she always seemed like a person who lost her soul, and her temper was terrible. This made Lu Wu and the muscle keep their distance from her. It was rare for them to see a genuine smile on Gu Zijia's face. Hence, Lu Wu and the muscle storied about her recent state. Gu Shijio felt very guilty. She had been desperate to help Di Fui since a few days ago. Although she had been smiling, it did not fool her two pets. She used to be the kind of person whose emotions were always under control. Never in her wildness imagination did she expect to be in such a situation. Gu Shijio then looked at the two of them. "Will you accompany me to a forbidden place tomorrow?" Lu Wu and the muscle nodded. "The Lord has already told us about it. He also taught us some techniques that can be used in the Buddha Fireland. We have been spending our time practicing in the water." Gu Zijia's heart was filled with warmth. It seemed Di Fui had arranged everything for her. "Well, let's practice together. I will take you for dinner later." The muscle and Lu Wu looked at each other again. They were so touched and wanted to cry. Their owner had finally returned to normal. They were ecstatic. The muscle immediately placed its order. "Master, I want to eat a roasted deer. Grill an entire sheep for me too." It mentioned 7 or 8 dishes in one breath, which were what Gu Shijio was best at, and they were also its most favorite dishes. Gu Shijio was in such a good mood that she accepted all the requests from the muscle. "Okay, you all practice well in the day, and I will cook for you at night." Yeah. The muscle and Lu Wu's eyes shone brightly. God knew how long they had not eaten food cooked by their owner. They happily turned 2 rounds, and then they jumped into the water again and practiced fiercely. Gu Shijio looked up at the sky and found that today's sunshine was very bright. The flowers and plants at the surrounding were fresh-looking. The scenery here was so beautiful, but she had not enjoyed it yet. Thus, she walked around the Biwu Palace for a bit while waiting for Di Fui. The scenery here was simple and elegant. It was like a fairyland in a dream. Every strand of grass, every piece of wood, every stack of bricks, and every place tile was ideally located. Water rafts, kiosks, white jade bridges, buildings. All of these adorned the scene. Since Di Fui loved to write, his writing was everywhere. It was on a big tree, on a few stones, etc. Under his influence, Gu Shijio also felt that she should leave her own writing here. It was the best to leave words that represented the love of 2 people. She either wrote Tianchang Dijio, which meant Di Fui and Gu Shijio together forever. Just when she was getting busy writing more words, someone patted her shoulder. "What are you doing?" She turned back to see Di Fui standing behind her. He seemed to laugh at her after he saw her writings. Her writing was very nice. However, it could not be compared with Di Fui's writing. Gu Shijio quickly looked at him. She saw that he seemed energetic. His purple robe was as eye-catching as always. He did not look any different from earlier, so she was not concerned that he would have suffered any injuries. She pulled his hand and asked him to see her writing. "Hey, my writing is good, right?" Di Fui gazed at the words she had written. He was stunned for a moment when he saw the words Di Fui and Gu Shijio together forever and erected his thumb. "They look good. It looks like a master had written this." Gu Shijio wanted to kick him. "Are you praising me or derogating me?" Di Fui looked serious. "Of course I am praising you." Both of them laughed for a moment. Gu Shijio suddenly looked at his robes and asked, "Why did you change to your purple robe?" Di Fui raised his eyebrow. "I always wear my purple robe. What is so strange about it?" It was true. Wearing a purple robe was his signature, but he had carried the identity of the Lord these days and always wore white robes instead. She had not seen him wearing a purple robe for nearly a month. She sized him up and sincerely commented, "You still look better in your purple robe." When she first met him, he was in his purple robe. She had fallen in love with Celestial Master Zhuo from the beginning, not the Lord. After that, although she knew that he was also the Lord, and knew that his real name was Huang too, she still called him Di Fui. Di Fui spun around and replied, "I think so. However, even if I wear white robes, I am still the most handsome man in the world." Gu Shijio could not help but laugh again. She liked to watch him being so egoistic and confident. In fact, no matter what robes he wore, he was still the best in her eyes. No one could be compared with him. However, she was still very anxious about finding the life-saving mushroom at this point, so she asked him about the special clothes. Di Fui caressed her hair. "Don't worry, I just went to get the materials. I still need to make it into wearable garments. Please wait for another 2 hours." Gu Shijio was curious. "What material is that?" Di Fui did not hide anything from her. "It is the skin of Kuanping." Gu Zijia's eyes opened widely. "Kuanping?" "Yes, the skin of Kuanping is the best material to help make someone fireproof. As long as you wear it, you will not be affected by the fire in the Buddha Fireland." Gu Shijio was speechless. A Kuanping could fly 90,000 miles per hour. It was a sacred animal, and also the ruler of aqua life. It was born with fantastic skills. When a Kuanping gets angry, it could set off wave up to thousands of feet high and flood the entire earth. It was a legendary animal. In fact, Gu Shijio had only heard about it but had never seen it. She also never intended to look for it. She never expected Di Fui to obtain its skin at this point. While Di Fui was talking, he unfolded the material. The sky blue skin looked soft and silky, and the color was bright. With any movements, colorful lights were flashing from its surface. According to legend, the skin of a Kuanping was invulnerable. It was even resistant to spells. When it was dipped in the water, it would not sink, and when it was in a fire, it would not burn. If it were made into clothes, it would be the best suit in this world. She looked at the material and then looked at him again. "Are you okay?" Di Fui rolled up the sleeves and let her see a slight wound on his arm. "Well, I was hurt by its tail fins. It was bleeding earlier but is better now. The wound was very shallow. It was just like a little cut on the skin. How could this guy consider this as an injury?" Gu Shijio was speechless, but she also felt relieved. She helped him to apply some medicine and asked him, "Is it painful?" Di Fui leaned on her body and put his wounded arm next to her lips. He answered very weakly, "It is painful. Come on, blow it for me." Gu Shijio was speechless. This guy started to act cute again. "Are you planning to sew this skin into a robe? We have a tight schedule. Quickly ask people to send this to a tailor." Gu Shijio turned her attention back to the serious matter. Di Fui smiled. "The skin is invulnerable. No needle in the world can pierce it, and no scissors can cut it." Gu Zijia's eyes were widened. "What do we do with it then? Can I just wrap with it around me?" Di Fui shook his head. "It is such a waste just to wrap it. It is such a good material. I will personally sew it for you." Gu Shijio was really stunned. "Do you know how to sew clothes? Could this guy sew?" Di Fui answered, "I didn't know, but I have learned it just for you." Gu Zijia's heart melted. This guy was really good at sweet-talking. Di Fui originally wanted to do it himself, but she insisted on following him. It is too rare for the Lord to sew something personally. She must witness it. Di Fui could not reject her and had to let her follow. Thus, Gu Shijio finally witnessed how Di Fui did his needlework. To be exact, what he was doing was not considered as sewing. There was no scissors and needle in his hands. Instead, he was using his spiritual power to do the work. Di Fui's movements were free and casual as if he was dancing gracefully. Gu Shijio enjoyed watching it. After 2 hours, a set of fireproof clothes was finally made. Gu Shijio tried it on the spot. The color of the robe was like the blue sky after a downpour. Although the style was simple, it fit her body perfectly. What's more, this outfit was very comfortable to wear. It was as smooth as satin and came with a cooling effect. The material was also very breathable. When she put it on, it could wrap her entire body and not expose a single inch of her skin. Gu Shijio spun around and asked him casually, "This outfit is a perfect fit. You did not even get my measurements. How did you know my size so well?" Di Fui looked at her and smiled cheekily. "I am afraid that I know your size better than yourself." Gu Shijio coughed. It seemed like she asked a stupid question. To test the fire resistance of this material, Di Fui immediately hit her with fire. The fire burned fiercely on her body, but she did not feel the heat inside. It was amazing. Gu Shijio then blurted out in excitement, "I probably don't even need to use the fire avoidance spell if I wear this on me." Di Fui shook his head. The fire in the Buddha Fire Land is not a usual fire. You still need to master the technique to avoid being burnt alive. One could tell from Di Fui's face that it was apparently very energy-consuming to make this outfit. His handsome face was now slightly pale. Gu Shijio was also worried that he was tired. She held his arm and said, "Please go and rest." She helped him to check his pulse. It seemed like he was overexhausted but still okay on the whole. Di Fui could not wait to lean on her. "Well, you rest with me and I will go." Gu Shijio was speechless. She brought him back to the room but did not accompany him to rest. From his eyes, she could clearly see that he wanted to do a naughty thing again. Gu Shijio did not want to fall into his trap. Besides, she was afraid that if she were with him, she would cause him to get even more tired. What he needed was a real rest. Thus, she sent him back into the house and then turned around and ran. Di Fui sat on the bed. He looked at her and smiled, but this smile lasted for 1 second before it disappeared. His face suddenly turned ashen, and sweat was flowing down from the forehead. He revealed a bloody and gory wound just below his rib. The injury was severe. His bone was visible. Fortunately, he had dealt with it in time, or else the consequences could be very frightening. He had used a spell earlier to deceive Gu Shijio into thinking that he was fine. The wound was visible now, and it was not a pretty sight. Di Fui applied medicine onto the wound and then used a spell to make it invisible again. In the past, he could ultimately be healed in 2 hours even with a bad injury. However, it was not working now. It seemed like his life had indeed come to an end. When he went to find trouble with a Kunpeng, he was supposed to turn off the directed audio spell. However, he was afraid of Gu Shijio being worried, so he left the spell on. When she contacted him, he had just obtained the skin and had not had time to attend to his wound. At that time, Mu Dian was applying medicine on him in tears while he casually talked to Gu Shijio through the directed audio spell. At night, Gu Shijio held a bonfire party and barbecued a lot of food. Those food were all full of spiritual power. They were delicious as well as nutritious. Di Fui sat there and ate a lot. The muscle was unhappy, but it did not dare to speak up. It felt as though it had been robbed. Fortunately, this time Gu Shijio had barbecued a lot of food, so all of them had a good time. There was more than enough to go around. After the bonfire party, Gu Shijio cleaned up after herself and stood up. "Well, my schedule is tight, I should go now." The Buddha Fire Land was a forbidden area that had been sealed. However, it could be opened from this Biwu Palace. Di Fui took Gu Shijio along with her 2 spiritual beasts to the back garden. He personally checked the outfit again and the things she had on her. He prepared a lot of things for her. There were various magical weapons and different herbs and medicine to ensure her safety. Di Fui was very caring. He carefully examined all these things, again and again, to confirm that she brought everything with her. The 4 messengers nearby and waited for the command of the Lord to open the door to the Forbidden Land. "Shijio, you should pay attention to everything. Your safety has to be the top priority. If you can't find the purple cloud mushroom, just head out. You can stay for a maximum of 6 days and not any longer, okay?" Gu Shijio promised. "Muscle, you have to use the ice protection technique to keep your shell cool. If there is a fire beast inside, You can resist it with your windcracker tactic. Di Fui instructed. The muscle had not taken any risks for a long time. It was excited. Well, you will be impressed, my lord. Luwu, you are good at using fire. Your fire is different from the fire in the Forbidden Land. When you use your fire, you can. Di Fui turned and told Luwu. Luwu was actually a little intolerant. My lord, you have already told me about it. Gu Shijio was like an arrow that was ready to fly. At this moment, she could not help but laugh at Di Fui's excessive concern. You don't have to advise anymore. They can already memorize your words. You are so long-winded today. Di Fui went slightly stiff, but he immediately smiled and said, Stupid, I'm just too concerned about you. Well, I know you care about me and that is why you are a bit panicked. Don't worry. I promise that I will not only bring out the purple cloud mushroom but also come back alive. It will be harmless. It is you that we need to be concerned about. You should rest and must not work anymore. Gu Shijio patted his shoulder and advised him. Di Fui raised his arms and hugged her tightly. I really can't bear to let you go. I'm reluctant to let you go alone. His arm was warm and it warmed Gu Zijia's heart. She smiled. Well, if it allows men to go in, I will let you come with me. The muscle and Lu Wu were stunned. They looked at each other and asked softly, Men are not allowed to enter? Master, my lord Lu Wu and I are both males. Di Fui faintly responded, You are a beast. Even if you are a male, you are not a man. What are you afraid of? The muscle was silent. Gu Shijio patted his hand that was still holding her waist. Well, the schedule is tight. I should go now. Let them open the door to the forbidden place. Di Fui kissed her lips. Take care. He released her and gestured to the 4 messengers. The 4 messengers were also very anxious. They had already known the news of the purple cloud mushroom from Gu Shijio. They hoped that she could pick up the things as soon as possible so that their lord could live forever. The earlier she got it done, the better. Therefore, once they received the command, they immediately opened the secret door to the Buddha Fireland. A large golden red aperture appeared in the air, and there seemed to be a raging fire inside. It was very difficult to open this secret door, and would undoubtedly consume a lot of energy from the 4 messengers. It could not be opened for a long time, so Gu Shijio did not dare to waste any time. She quickly pulled the muscle and Lu Wu and flew into the aperture. The moment she entered, she looked back and saw that Di Fui was standing there and watching her. However, Gu Shijio could not see his facial expression as they were too far apart. Gu Shijio only saw him smile at her and wave his hand. In a matter of seconds, she had already fallen into the Buddha Fireland and could not be seen anymore. The aperture gradually disappeared after Gu Shijio went into it. Mu Feng and the others sighed in relief. Miss Gu was who created many miracles, so maybe she could do it again. Mu Dian immediately bowed to Di Fui body and said, My lord, you are badly injured. Please go and rest. Mu Dian knew the severity of his injuries, but his master did not allow him to mention it, so he did not dare to tell anyone. Is master injured? Mu Feng's facial expression changed. When Mu Dian was about to explain, Di Fui waved his hand and said, It's just a small matter. I have something that needs to be attended to immediately. He then took out a stack of books from his storage space and passed it to the 4 of them. You must copy all these books in 4 days. It cannot be delayed. The 4 messengers were stunned when they saw the stack of books in his hands. These books were all-encompassing. There were books related to techniques, astrology, medicine refining, battle, etc. Based on the title of the books, they seemed to be the secret techniques that only the Lord could master. The fonts of these books were the same. Apparently, they were written by Di Fui personally. Mu Feng was bold enough to ask, My lord, the skills written on these books should be secret skills. It is not appropriate for us to read them, Di Fui faintly said. There is nothing inappropriate, you can copy it. After you finish it, please send them to my study room. Okay, the clock is ticking. Please go now. The 4 messengers looked at each other and knew that their masters had never played by the rules. Thus, they did not dare to ask anything else. They quickly took the books and left. Each messenger had 12 books to copy. It was indeed a big project to complete in 4 days. They might need to stay up late to get it done on time. When the 4 messengers left, Di Fui stood and observed the place where Gu Shijio had disappeared. He spent an extended amount of time there. All of a sudden his hair started turning white. She did not like to see him with white hair, so even if it utilized a substantial amount of spiritual power, he still tried to maintain his black hair in front of her. However, it was unnecessary now, so he just let it be natural. There was fire everywhere. The earth and rock under their feet were burning. Gu Shijio could still feel the heat even though she wore the outfit made by the skin of a kuanping and used the fire avoidance technique. It had been 4 days. She searched for it for 4 days and still did not see the purple cloud mushroom. This forbidden place was vast. It seemed to have over 100,000 mountains. Gu Shijio initially thought that the pathway would be clear based on her dream. She expected that after she came in, she could easily find the sea full of purple cloud mushrooms. She did not expect that the mountains in this area would all look very similar. Every mountain she walked through looked like a mountain in her dream, but none of them gave her any hope. How could this be? Was it really just a dream? Master, are we still going forward? The mussel had been walking around with her, and it felt that the fire had burned its shell. If it did not use the technique taught by Di Fui, it might have been a cooked mussel by now. Fortunately, Lu Wu was a fire beast. Hence, even after walking for so many days, it still looked well as before. The only concern was that its beautiful eyes were full of exhaustion. After 4 days and 4 nights of searching, its owner did not even rest for 2 hours but just continued searching for the purple cloud mushroom. Lu Wu looked at Gu Shijio and noticed that her eyes were a little red, but she was still energetic. She bit her lips and only answered with one word, "Continue." Well, the purple cloud mushroom was the only hope of their master. She would try her best to find it. Thus, the mussel and Lu Wu continued to accompany her in the search. In this forbidden place, there were spewing fires as well as unknown fire beasts that jumped out from time to time and wanted to hurt them. They were not too overpowering thus far, but quite troublesome nonetheless. Although Gu Shijio and the 2 beasts could kill them eventually, it was indeed very exhausting. There was no day or night here as the sky had always been red. Gu Shijio calculated the time according to the watch on her body. Di Fui said that she could only stay here for 6 days, which meant she had less than 2 days. However, she still had no clue where to find the mushroom. Her heart was getting tired. It grew heavier and heavier each passing moment. What if it was really just a dream? What should she do? It was boiling around her, but her hands and feet were bursting with coldness. Suddenly she stopped. The mussel almost bumped into her. It took a step back and asked, "Master, what's wrong?" I suddenly feel uncomfortable." Gu Shijio could not help but press on her chest. Her pretty face was pale. "Master, you are too tired. I think you should take a break. You can't do this anymore." The mussel used its clam shell to support her back. Gu Shijio bit her lips. Was this the reason? Maybe. After all, she was not just staying up late in this place. She had to constantly utilize a spell just to stay alive. However, she could not afford to rest. There were still 2 nights and a day. She could not sleep. She shook her head. She did not know why, but she inexplicably wanted to shed tears. She initially wanted to continue walking, but at this moment, she felt that her legs were weak and she could hardly stand. A cold sweat came out along her forehead. Finally, she leaned on the mussel's shell and almost fell to the ground. "Master! Master!" The mussel was frightened. It hurriedly put her into its shell. The stones on the ground were scorching hot. If its owner sat down, she might get burned. It was quite cool inside the shell. The mussel shrank its body into the shell and looked at her with concern. "Master, your face looks terrible. Do you want to take a break?" "Hey, Master, why are you crying?" Gu Shijio did not know what was going on but just felt like she wanted to cry. Her tears dropped uncontrollably. She wiped the tears on her face and shook her head. She tried to talk, but her throat seemed to block by a duck egg, and she could not speak. Master, I think it may be too hot. What is the term? Heatstroke. You must be getting a heatstroke. The mussel pretended to be a doctor and concluded. It took out a bottle of iced honey water for her. Come, master, drink it. Gu Shijio also felt thirsty, so she took a few mouthfuls of the drink. Di Fui made it. It seemed like Di Fui really prepared everything for Gu Shijio. He even asked the mussel to store a lot of food and drinks for her. The strange thing was that she did not feel thirsty and hungry at all over the past few days. Gu Shijio looked at the bottle of iced honey water. She felt as though a flood of tears were going to start rolling down her cheeks again. She shook her head and leaned against the inner shell of the mussel. She closed her eyes for a moment. Maybe she was exhausted. Therefore, she decided to take a break and rest for an hour. Her chest was still very tight and in pain. Was she suffering from angina? She took out some medicine and consumed it immediately. In just a matter of seconds, she quickly fell asleep. She had a dream. There was a lake somewhere far away and a garden with flowers, trees, and a big rock. Different kinds of flowers were fully blossomed in the area. There was also a cloud surrounding her like the Yaoqi Wonderland. Gu Shijio recognized this place. It was the back garden of the Biwu Palace. After that she saw Di Fui. Her heart suddenly sank. His hair was white, and his face was as pale as snow. Gu Shijio noticed the words engraved on the big rock behind him, Tianchang Dijio, that was written by Gu Shijio. Gu Zijia's eyes were fixed on his hair. Why was his hair white? What had happened? She turned her head again and saw Mu Feng and the other 3 messengers kneeling somewhere not far away. Their eyes were also fixed on Di Fui, and their bodies were trembling. They were tearing like crazy. Gu Shijio immediately ran over. Fui, what's wrong with you? Her body passed through Di Fui and she looked back. Di Fui still sat there. He did not look at her and also did not look at the 4 messengers who were tearing crazily. He was looking down at something in his hand. It was a ring. Their wedding ring. His fingers were touching the ring and he sighed. Shijio, I am sorry. Gu Zijia's heart was tightened as if she had expected something to happen. She rushed to him again. Di Fui, don't scare me. Her body passed through him again, and she fell to the ground. In fact, she had hurt her knee, but she did not care about it. She turned to see him and then witnessed a scene that made her heart shatter. There was dim light that surrounded Di Fui, and his feet gradually disappeared. Di Fui, don't you dare leave me. You are not due to go yet. How can you be immortalized now? Gu Shijio was panicked and screamed at the top of her lungs. She rushed over again. However, she still could not touch him at all and just passed through his body. The longer she stared, the less she could see of Di Fui. He was fading away. Gu Shijio burst out crying. She ran to his side and pulled his sleeve. Di Fui, don't leave me. I'm afraid. Master. Master. Gu Shijio could hear the mussel. She shuddered, and everything in front of her shattered. She suddenly opened her eyes, and she saw the worried eyes of the mussel. Master, master, are you dreaming? Are you feeling better now? Gu Shijio was conscious again. Her heart was pumping at a fast speed as if it did not belong to her. It was a dream just now. Fortunately, it was a dream. However, the suffering she endured was real. She wiped her face and found a big stain of water in her hand. Master, what nightmare did you have? You were crying and screaming. The mussel was scared for her. Gu Shijio took a deep breath and jumped straight up. We have to leave now. I want to go out. Her voice was trembling. The mussel still wondered. Master, we haven't found the purple cloud mushroom yet, and there are still 2 days. We should not give up. Although it also wanted to go out early, it understood how vital the purple cloud mushroom was to its master. It was challenging to come in, so it would be a waste to go out empty-handed. However, Gu Shijio was impatient. I want to go out first. She wanted to make sure that he was fine first. She would then come in again. In this forbidden land, she could not contact anyone from the outside world. Otherwise, she would have reached Di Fui by using her directed audio spell. Gu Shijio rushed out of the mussel's shell. As she was too worried and panicked, when she landed, she almost fell. Lu Wu was waiting anxiously outside. Fortunately, it quickly used its tail to help Gu Shijio stand stably. It asked with concern, "Master, are you okay?" Gu Shijio shook her head. "We need to go out. Right now." She did not want to was a single second. Di Fui had taught her how to go out, but she needed to travel to the place where she entered. When she was searching for the mushroom inside the Forbidden Land, she could not miss any place, so she never used teleportation. Now she just wanted to go out as soon as possible, so she did not care about overlooking any sight anymore. Since she had gone deep into the land, it would take 6 hours to go back even with teleportation. She grabbed the mussel in her left hand and pulled Lu Wu in her right hand. "Let's go!" Gu Shijio did not wait for the two beasts to respond and started teleporting. In this forbidden land, the speed of teleportation was significantly reduced. She could only teleport about 20 miles at a time, and she had traveled 700 to 800 miles already. She carried the two beasts and stopped on a hillside after more than 20 teleportations. She was understandably already tired and exhausted. Her limbs were trembling, and her throat was dry. However, this was not the most terrible feeling she had even for today. The scene in her dreams where Di Fui had been immortalized was worse. It made her even more panicked and worried. It was just a dream. It must be a dream. It must be because she missed him too much and was too afraid of seeing him die. The last day of Di Fui's life had not come yet. There were still 6 days to go. How could it be? What she saw must have just been a dream then. However, her dreams were often real, so what if this was also true? Could it be that Di Fui already knew that he would pass on a bit earlier? And he sent Gu Shijio away on her own so that she did not have to witness it. Maybe her dream about Purple Cloud Mushroom was fake. It was his manipulation. But he would not do that. Di Fui, I will hate you if you did this. All kinds of thoughts were lingering in her head, and the tears in her eyes started to drop again. Her eyes were getting blurry. "Master, are you crying again? What dream did you have?" The mussel started to regret. If it knew it earlier, it would not have asked her to take a rest. Gu Shijio rubbed her eyes with her sleeves. She wanted to talk, but her throat felt as if it was blocked. The mussel felt her little hand was cold. It felt distressed. "Master, take a break." Gu Shijio took a slight breather. "I am okay." She was eager to go home. When she was just about to pull the two beasts and teleport, suddenly, Lu Wu shouted, Master. What is that?" Gu Shijio was shocked by its scream. She followed the direction where its tail pointed and saw a few purple bushes on the hillside in the front of a cliff. As a mountain blocked it, Gu Shijio could not see the whole picture there. But it was very bright purple. Gu Shijio desperately teleported to that place. It was a large piece of land full of purple cloud mushrooms. As seen in her dreams, those purple cloud mushrooms looked like hands pinching a spell. She started to feel hopeful again. She found it. God, she really found it. Her dream was real. Di Fui did not manipulate it. This thing really existed. Gu Zijia's heart was racing again. This time, it was for a positive reason. The dream directed her to come here, and the purple cloud mushroom did exist, which proved that God wanted her to save Di Fui. The dream she had in the shell of the mussel must be due to her worries of losing Di Fui. It could not be real. God would not play with her this way, right? There was a variety of thoughts in her mind. Meanwhile, she had already flown over and reached out to pick the purple cloud mushroom. "Master, be careful." Lu Wu suddenly rushed over. At the same time, there was a fiery giant dragon that leaped up from the bushes near the purple cloud mushrooms. It spouted a flame and shot directly at Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio almost got hit by the flame. She quickly issued a spell to block the fire. Lu Wu used its tails to issue a fire to block the flame too. It squinted with its round eyes and held its small claws. It is actually a level 8 beast. The mussel also rushed over. Its clamshell was as sharp as a knife. It is not only a level 8 beast, it is almost level 9. "Little Lu, let's work together to kill it." Lu Wu already charged forward. Okay, be careful, don't let it roast you. It spun its tails like a windmill and charged toward the fiery giant dragon. The muscle enlarged its body to 10 times bigger than its usual size. It was like a big moving house. While the little man who was standing on the big house also turned into a golden force, with both hands pulling out a sharp weapon while heading toward the giant dragon. Although the giant dragon was not in a human appearance, it could speak human language. While it was fighting with these two beasts, it shouted, "I have been waiting here for 10,000 years for the purple cloud mushroom. You can't snatch it. Go back now. It's not easy for you to beat me at this level. I don't want to give you all a hard time." Its voice was booming and left everyone's ears buzzing. 10,000 years. This giant dragon had been waiting for 10,000 years. The muscle felt that it was considered old enough in this world. It never expected to meet someone older than it. It stopped playing its weapon and looked at the dragon. The scales on the dragon were bright red. When it was flying, it shined like an arched rainbow. A pair of eyes were like two lanterns, and its fierceness was overflowing. It was a 10,000-year-old beast. It was not a good idea to fight with it. In the past, when the muscle encountered spiritual beasts at this level, it would definitely run far away. But now it could not give up. The purple cloud mushroom was the last hope that Gu Shijio had to keep Di Fui alive. She would do anything to retrieve enough for Di Fui. Due to the urgency that Gu Shijio faced, she did not want to fight at this time. She was anxious to pick up a few mushrooms and quickly return to the Biwu Palace. I'll only pick 12. There was a large piece of land here, with hundreds of purple cloud mushrooms. She thought that it should be okay for her to take 12. However, the giant dragon was unreasonable. "No, you can't even pick one. All the mushrooms here belong to me." Gu Zijia's eyes become more fierce. "Don't regret it. If you force me to fight with you, I will take more than 12. The giant dragon laughed. "You are just a little human, and you dare to threaten me. You should give up. You are not going to take a single mushroom back." Gu Shijio did not want to waste time on it anymore. She pulled out the long whip from her waist. "All right, you asked for it. Don't blame me." Before attacking the dragon, Gu Shijio realized that its blood could also help prolong Di Fui's life. The muscle knew that the fight was inevitable, so it also threatened the dragon. "You are such a stubborn creature. You must be a lousy dragon to still have this form after 10,000 years. You are not qualified to own all the mushrooms here. I am going to cut you into pieces and bake you for dinner." The giant dragon could not believe how irrational these people were to take it on. It was dumbfounded. It roared thunderously that the land beneath it was shaking. It then hovered around and turned to rush forward toward the muscle. The muscle was ready and instinctively released its defense mechanism. Lu Wu also prepared itself to attack the unreasonable dragon. After 15 minutes, the muscle snake spears had been shattered while Lu Wu's tails were burnt. It became apparent that these two beasts were not at the same level as this dragon. Fortunately, Gu Shijio had blocked most of the attacks from the dragon, or else these two beasts would have been its dinner instead. Although the dragon proved to be a powerful opponent, Gu Shijio was not ready to concede. She continuously attacked the creature with her sword and whip. The constant attacks made the dragon grow frustrated. It wanted to destroy her. Under its violent attack, Gu Shijio felt as though she was in a boat during a raging storm. If she were unlucky, it would capsize at any time. Therefore, she regularly retreated. However, the giant dragon continued to chase after her. After some time, they were both far away from the prized treasure that they sought. At first, the muscles and Lu Wu were moving along with the two of them. However, both beasts slowly faded into the background. Initially, the giant dragon was very alert and protected the mushrooms. However, after a few strikes, it did not even pay attention to them anymore. They were now miles away. Suddenly, the dragon realized that the muscle was missing. It immediately wanted to fly back to check on the mushrooms. However, it was too late. "Master, I have picked up the purple cloud mushrooms." It opened its shell, and there were dark and light purple mushrooms inside. The mushrooms almost filled up its shell. There were so many of them that a stranger might have thought it collected all purple cloud mushroom from the land. The dragon was mystified and almost fainted in shock. It unleashed its claws and flew toward the mussels at its fastest speed. "Return my purple cloud mushrooms." In response, the mussel shut its shell and rolled towards Gu Shijio. "Save me, master." Gu Shijio teleported towards the mussel and utilized her long and sturdy whip to block the momentum of the dragon. She started to fight with it again. Since the purple cloud mushroom had been collected, Gu Shijio was more energetic now. The fight with the dragon naturally grew more intense. Lu Wu and the mussel stayed out of the action. But Lu Wu did ask the mussel, "Are there at least 100 mushrooms inside your shell?" The mussel responded proudly, "It was Master who sent me a directed audio message to ask me to collect the mushrooms. However, she asked me only to pick a few. In the end, I collected every single one. Look, they are all inside my shell." Lu Wu was speechless. It breathed a sigh of relief. Master can now refine as many medicines as she wants. The dragon had excellent hearing. Even though it was midway battling with Gu Shijio, it could hear the conversation between the two beasts. Its heart was filled with rage at this point. There were many a time when it wanted to forget about Gu Shijio and shred the mussel into pieces instead. Luckily for the mussel, Gu Shijio always had a plan. "Two of you should go to the place where we entered and wait for me. I will arrive later." The mussel was worried. "Master, are you able to deal with this beast on your own?" Of course. Gu Shijio made it seem so easy. Lu Wu was quite intelligent and knew Gu Zijia's real intention was not to flaunt. "Mussel, we will distract Master if we stay here. Let's go." It looked at Gu Shijio again. Master is too strong for this opponent. The mussel was relieved. "All right, Master. We will wait for you there." The two beasts left and headed all the way to the entrance. The further they went, the more furious the dragon became. Gu Zijia's current skills were definitely worse than during her prime. However, she had a lot more experiences to bring to her benefit. Moreover, since the mussel and Lu Wu had left, she had no concern anymore, so she could fight without pressure. Furthermore, the dragon was in a state of anger. Although it was more violent than before, there were more weaknesses to exploit. Every time it got distracted by the mussel, Gu Shijio knew that she could strike it down. An hour later, the mussel and Lu Wu arrived at their point of entry. Before they could stand firmly, there was a blue shadow that flashed from afar. It was Gu Shijio. The mussel and Lu Wu were relieved and rushed forward to her. "Master, have you gotten rid of the stupid dragon? Or do we need to rush out before it chases after us?" It did not manage to finish its sentence, because Gu Shijio took out a red alchemy tool. Lu Wu's eyes widened. "Master, have you killed the dragon?" Gu Shijio nodded. Of course. The mussel seemed to doubt her statement. Since when had its master become so powerful? It gave Gu Shijio a thumbs up. "Master, you are too strong. Master, you must be exhausted. You should rest first before you open the enchanted barrier. It is still early, it has not been 6 days yet." Di Fui had taught Gu Shijio the way to open the enchanted barrier. It was indeed quite exhausting. They had come in for almost 5 days, and this trip was undoubtedly full of rewards. So what was the rush? Gu Shijio shook her head. She did not rest and directly performed the technique to open the entrance of the enchanted barrier. "Di Fui, I am coming back with the herb. You must wait for me, don't leave me in despair." A few minutes later, a colorful rainbow door appeared in the air. Gu Shijio dragged the two beasts. "Let's go." As Gu Shijio was rushing out of the rainbow gate, she almost fell once they exited. She was really too tired. For nearly 5 days, she barely had a rest. Before she came back, she fought with the giant dragon that made her even more exhausted. She could barely stand properly, and cold sweat was dripping from her forehead. It was clear that she did not care about anything right now except Di Fui. She quickly surveyed the area and realized that everything was still the same. The mountains, the rock, the flowers. Everything had remained the same, and there was no white cloth present. She immediately calmed herself down. Di Fui was the master here. If he had already immortalized, there must be white cloth hanging around the palace. Therefore he was still alive. Since the time that she returned was close to midnight, the garden was tranquil, and the 4 messengers were not around. Gu Shijio did not even have the power to teleport anymore. She sat down on a stone and used her directed audio spell to contact Di Fui. She had collected the medicine for him. He could be saved. She wanted him to come and pick her up. She was exhausted, and she also missed his hugs. She wanted to tell him how tired she was to make him feel bad. Unfortunately, the device did not seem to be working. What had happened? Did the Di Fui switch off the spell again? Where did he go this time? Why would he even take such a risk? It could not be. Gu Shijio had dialed 7 to 8 times in a row. However, there was no response on the other side. Maybe he was asleep? Or perhaps he accidentally switched it off. She could not help herself and was not in the mood to second guess. She made up her mind and directly teleported into Di Fui's bedroom. Because of her extreme fatigue, she only managed to teleport outside the bedroom, even though she intended to land on the bed. Anyway, just as she was about to go in, she inadvertently looked up to see Di Fui's plaque. She was stunned. When Gu Shijio came here in the past, she was so impressed by the 3 words that graced this palace and spent hours studying the writing and meaning. But now, the 3 words were gone. There was an empty plaque hanging there. Gu Shijio recalled that the background of the plate was light gold, and the words were purple, but now it was plain light gold, and it seemed like no one had even written a word on it. What had happened? Why did Di Fui erase the words from the plaque? Gu Shijio was getting panicked, but she tried to suppress her concerns. She took a deep breath and went straight into the palace. She was speechless. The palace was still the same palace, but the things inside had a very drastic change. The flowers and birds on the windows had disappeared. The light green plum-shaped bed sheet had also become a plain bed sheet. The plum drawing on it had disappeared. Di Fui liked to draw and had designed plenty of the items in his residence. However, all his masterpieces had become blank canvases. Gu Zijia's brain went blank. Her face was pale at this point. What happened here? Is this some sort of prank? Di Fui? Where was Di Fui? Gu Shijio looked at the bed. Her bedsheet was still there, but Di Fui's had disappeared. In other words, everything that belonged to Di Fui had disappeared. It was as if he never even existed. What was going on? Was this a nightmare? Gu Shijio subconsciously pinched her thigh, and it hurt. She was not dreaming. In a panicked state, she rushed out and fell at the entrance. A man appeared from out of nowhere. When the person saw Gu Shijio sitting on the ground, he sighed and immediately bowed. "My lord, you are finally here." Gu Zijia's knees were painful, and she also hurt her palm. She suddenly looked up and saw Mu Feng standing in front of her. "What did you call me?" "My lord? What happened to you?" "Oh no. You are injured." Mu Feng stepped forward and held a tube of ointment to treat her injuries. Gu Shijio remained silent. She stared at Mu Feng and suspected that he was being impersonated. However, she could not see any noticeable differences. "Mu Feng, as your lord, I want to know where is Di Fui. Answer me." Mu Feng looked blankly at Gu Shijio. "Di Fui? Who is Di Fui?" Gu Shijio was losing her mind. "Mu Feng, listen to me. I am in no mood to joke with you. Where is he? What is he playing again? Please help me to tell him that if he lies to me again, I will hate him forever." Mu Feng looked confused and scratched his scalp. "How do I dare to make fun of you? I have really never heard of this person." Gu Shijio was furious. "Mu Feng, what are you playing? He is your master and the real lord. Please don't make such a low-class joke with me. This is not funny." Her voice was sharp, and the aura around her was intense. Mu Feng shuddered and quickly kneeled. Were you poisoned in the Forbidden Land? You have been our master all the time. Who the hell is Di Fui? How can he be the real lord? He looked worried and took out a spray from his sleeve. "My lord, this is the solution to remove any spells or illusions." Can I spray it on you? Gu Shijio was speechless. She involuntarily took a few steps back. Her hands and feet were suddenly freezing. Mu Feng seemed to be speaking the truth. It looked like he had never heard of Di Fui. He seemed to have forgotten entirely about Di Fui. She seemed to think of something in her heart but just refused to admit it. She did not want to face it. In disbelief, she took out a stack of papers from her storage bag. This stack of papers contained information that Di Fui had written over the past few days. At the time, Gu Shijio did not want him to write, so she grabbed the stack of papers from him and put them in her storage bag. Now, she took them out and wanted to use them to prove Di Fui's existence. This is what he wrote a few days ago. It is confidential information only known by the Lord. As she spoke, she looked at the papers and suddenly went silent. Initially, the papers were filled with Di Fui's handwriting, but now they had become blank pieces paper. Gu Shijio checked every single piece of paper as she could not believe it. Regrettably, the more she looked, the worse she felt. They were all blank papers. In fairness, there was a paper with a few words. However, it was not his writing but her graffiti. Mu Feng quickly stepped forward and said worriedly as he saw the sweat that covered Gu Zijia's forehead. "My lord, you should take a break. Perhaps, you have stayed in the Forbidden Land for too long. You are probably suffering from an illusion." Gu Shijio was perplexed. She could not believe that a living being could just disappear without leaving anything behind. Most importantly, it was Di Fui's most loyal subordinate who claimed that she had an illusion. What was Di Fui trying to do? Di Fui. Di Fui. This name flashed across her mind desperately. How could she forget about it? How could people forget about him? He was such a magnanimous person. Gu Shijio then realized that she was probably in her biggest nightmare right now. The worst part was that there was no waking up. Suddenly, she grabbed Mu Feng's collar. "Follow me." Not waiting for Mu Feng to speak a single word, she teleported to Di Fui's study room. There were countless of scrolls written by Di Fui there, and they were all the only copies in the world. Those were the Lord's spells and strategies which Di Fui wanted to pass to her. Hence, it was almost impossible that Di Fui would destroy it. Gu Shijio had paid several visits to Di Fui's study room lately as he often taught her a lot in there. She used to just sit on his lap and crash into his embrace to sniff his odor while listening to him talking about the spells. At this moment, the chair he used to sit on was still there, and there were even a few scrolls on his desk with text on it. Gu Shijio rushed forward and retrieved one of the scrolls. Although she had a blurred vision at the time, she rapidly flipped through the manuscript and noticed there were many words on it. "Mufo. This is written by him. These are written by him." She tried to be calm, but her voice was clearly trembling. Mu Feng was stunned as he took a look at the scroll in her hand. "My lord, these scrolls are done by me. Weren't you the one who gave me the instruction to copy them?" "What?" The scroll in Gu Zijia's hands almost dropped on the floor. She took a deep breath and rubbed her eyes. However, she realized the handwriting did not belong Di Fui, it was Mu Feng's. She refused to believe in it but took a few other scrolls. As a result, she found out all the handwriting belonged to the 4 messengers. None was written by Di Fui. She wavered and slumped on Di Fui's chair. What was going on? Was she losing her mind? Her limbs were numb, and her head was blank as if she had fallen into hell. She wanted to break out of this place, but unfortunately, the hands which used to pull her up would never appear again. Di Fui. Di Fui. He had left her. The dream was real. He had immortalized. But he was not due yet. It should be 6 days later. Why would it happen so much earlier? She worked so hard to collect the herbs, but it was useless now. How could it be like this? Was it one of Di Fui's plans? Was he afraid that she would be very sad during the last few days, so he hid himself to prevent her from facing his immortalization? With one last crazy attempt, her gaze stopped at Mu Feng again. She was furious. Is he hiding? You tell him, I've got the purple cloud mushroom for him. Please ask him to come out. Come out. Mu Feng remained silent. Hence, Gu Shijio no longer continued talking with him. She teleported out from the room. At the top of her lungs, she screamed, "Di Fui, come out! I really got the herbs. You're fine now. Stop fooling around. Come out. Come out, please." Gu Shijio had used her spiritual power to amplify her voice. Hence, the entire Biwu Palace could hear her. As long as Di Fui was still in the Biwu Palace, he could definitely hear it no matter where he was. She waited for 15 minutes after her bold attempt. However, he did not appear. She stood there idly. Her dress was fluttering as the wind blew. The wind was warm, but she felt as if it was icy cold. Di Fui did not come, but the Muscle and Lu Wu have arrived. "Master." Gu Zijia's eyes sparkled when she saw them, as if she found hope. "Muscle, open your shell. Where's my purple cloud mushroom?" The Muscle quickly opened its shell and showed her the mushrooms. Here. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief. "Muscle, you should know who I need to give these mushrooms to, right?" She was certain that Muscle knew those mushrooms were to save Di Fui, hence, both the Muscle and Lu Wu should know who she was talking about. The Muscle was idled for a moment and responded, "Master, are planning to make medicine with the mushrooms?" Out of her eagerness, she quickly asked, "Who are you trying to save?" "To save?" The Muscle and Lu Wu looked at each other. "It was said that this medicine could prolong one's life and prevent aging, but we never knew that you wanted to save anyone." Gu Zijia's heart sank. "Muscle, don't you tell me you have forgotten about Di Fui as well?" The Muscle and Lu Wu looked at each other again and shook their head. The Muscle carefully asked, "Master, who is Di Fui?" That was enough to throw her off. It was as if she stepped on an empty space while walking on a cliff. Upon that realization, she opted to be alone. "Master!" "My lord," Mu Feng and the Muscle was calling Gu Shijio. However, she did not turn back but ran toward the star-gazing chamber. "Di Fui, please, don't scare me. Although I look strong, I can't take this right now. I'm scared. I'm really scared." She slowed down when she arrived at the doorstep of the star-gazing chamber. Gu Shijio did not dare to enter. She would know the truth once she enters, but was she able to handle it? Gu Shijio inched forward step by step as if her legs were tied to a heavy weight. She was not usually someone who liked to avoid things, as she used to face every problem bravely. However, she was scared now. She remained stationary for 3 to 4 minutes as she looked at the staircase. She did not have the courage to walk up the stairs. Di Fui had been walking up and down the staircase with her these days. He held her hand every single time. However, no one would do the same anymore. Gu Shijio had to face her fears alone this time. A moment later, she finally made up her mind and rushed in. She saw the starry sky and then slowly sat on the floor. The sky was covered by countless stars. No one would ever notice which star has been missing if they were not an expert. It was still the same starry sky. However, the big star she cared for the most was missing. Initially, there were 2 very bright 7-colored stars shining in the sky. However, only one was left. The one that represented Di Fui was gone. It had fallen. It had indeed fallen. Gu Shijio slumped to the floor, and she would not get up. Everything did not make sense anymore. The chilliness started to creep into her bones while her body was getting numb. It seemed that this was all not a joke and that she had indeed returned late, just like in her dream. She got the herbs, but God did not want to allow her to save his life. Her mind was blank, and she could not get a lot of information at the moment. The only phrase lingering in her mind was, "He is dead. He is really dead." She couldn't see him anymore. The last time they saw each other was the moment before she entered the Buddha Fireland. She could not believe that quick hug and kiss was their farewell. She had no idea how long she had been sitting there. It was as if there was no point for her even to get up. Mu Feng was visibly worried. He asked, "My lord? My lord? Are you all right?" However, Gu Shijio just continued to look into the starry sky without acknowledging him. In the end, Mu Feng decided to break in as he was indeed worried. He noticed Gu Shijio looked very pale as she was looking at the stars. She did not move at all. "My lord?" Why don't you go back and rest? He thought the Lord must be exhausted. A moment later, Gu Shijio slowly shifted her gaze to his face. Mu Feng, have you really forgotten about him? He was once your master, the Lord you were always loyal to. You've been following his lead for a few hundred years. His name is Di Fui or Huang Tu. Her voice was hoarse, and her eyes were red but tearless. I have no idea what's happening, but he has been so nice to all of you. How could you forget about him? He has done so much for the world. How could he have vanished like this? Mu Feng frowned as he could feel the pain Gu Shijio resonated when she mentioned the two names. Sadly, he could not recall anything. Gu Shijio did not bother him anymore. She finally got up, but she could not stand properly. Although the floor was flat, she walked as if she was on a bumpy road. She then proceeded to wander every single corner in the Biwu Palace. Unfortunately, still did not manage to find a single thing about Di Fui. Everything related to Di Fui was gone, including the words he engraved. It felt like this person had never belonged to the Biwu Palace. It seemed like Di Fui was just a person she imagined in her dream but never existed in reality. Even the muscle and Lu Wu had forgotten about him. She was the only one who remembered this person. Gu Shijio wondered if Di Fui was worried that she would be too depressed. Hence, he decided to cast a spell on the Biwu Palace to vanish everything before he immortalized. Perhaps he wanted to remove her memories too, but she was immune to it. If he only cast a spell on the Biwu Palace, then perhaps people on the outside would still remember him. With a faint sense of hope, she instantly rushed out of the palace. Unfortunately, Gu Shijio soon realized that everything about Di Fui had vanished from this world. Gu Shijio obsessively checked around the towns and spoke to numerous people of different classes. Sadly, no one remembered Di Fui. While she was asking about Di Fui, she heard about the news of a meteor shower a day ago. Four different colored rays stopped the meteors in midair and burnt them into ashes before it fell on the continent. While after the meteor shower, the overlord of the Jiuxing clan, Chen Yueren, the overlord of the Yinyang clan, Hua Wen, Celestial Master Yu, Tian Jiyue, and even Lan Jingyi from the Mermaid Kingdom disappeared altogether. Gu Shijio slumped to the floor, and she would not get up. Everything did not make sense anymore. The chilliness started to creep into her bones while her body was getting numb. It seemed that this was all not a joke and that she had indeed returned late, just like in her dream. She got the herbs, but God did not want to allow her to save his life. Her mind was blank, and she could not get a lot of information at the moment. The only phrase lingering in her mind was, "He is dead. He is really dead." She couldn't see him anymore. The last time they saw each other was the moment before she entered the Buddha Fireland. She could not believe that quick hug and kiss was their farewell. She had no idea how long she had been sitting there. It was as if there was no point for her even to get up. Mu Feng was visibly worried. He asked, "My lord? My lord? Are you all right?" However, Gu Shijio just continued to look into the starry sky without acknowledging him. In the end, Mu Feng decided to break in as he was indeed worried. He noticed Gu Shijio looked very pale as she was looking at the stars. She did not move at all. "My lord? Why don't you go back and rest?" He thought the lord must be exhausted. A moment later, Gu Shijio slowly shifted her gaze to his face. "Mu Feng, have you really forgotten about him? He was once your master, the lord you were always loyal to. You've been following his lead for a few hundred years. His name is Di Fui or Huang Tu." Her voice was hoarse, and her eyes were red but tearless. "I have no idea what's happening, but he has been so nice to all of you. How could you forget about him? He has done so much for the world. How could he have vanished like this?" Mu Feng frowned as he could feel the pain Gu Shijio resonated when she mentioned the two names. Sadly, he could not recall anything. Gu Shijio did not bother him anymore. She finally got up, but she could not stand properly. Although the floor was flat, she walked as if she was on a bumpy road. She then proceeded to wander every single corner in the Biwu Palace. Unfortunately, still did not manage to find a single thing about Di Fui. Everything related to Di Fui was gone, including the words he engraved. It felt like this person had never belonged to the Biwu Palace. It seemed like Di Fui was just a person she imagined in her dream but never existed in reality. Even the muscle and Lu Wu had forgotten about him. She was the only one who remembered this person. Gu Shijio wondered if Di Fui was worried that she would be too depressed. Hence, he decided to cast a spell on the Biwu Palace to vanish everything before he immortalized. Perhaps he wanted to remove her memories too, but she was immune to it. If he only cast a spell on the Biwu Palace, then perhaps people on the outside would still remember him. With a faint sense of hope, she instantly rushed out of the palace. Unfortunately, Gu Shijio soon realized that everything about Di Fui had vanished from this world. Gu Shijio obsessively checked around the towns and spoke to numerous people of different classes. Sadly, no one remembered Di Fui. While she was asking about Di Fui, she heard about the news of a meteor shower a day ago. Four different colored rays stopped the meteors in midair and burnt them into ashes before it fell on the continent. While after the meteor shower, the overlord of the Jiuxing clan, Chen Yueran, the overlord of the Yinyang clan, Hua Wen, Celestial Master Yu, Tian Jiyue, and even Lan Jingyi from the Mermaid Kingdom disappeared altogether. Rumor has it that they received instruction from the Lord to stop the meteor shower with all their skills and energy. Thus, they managed to stop a disaster, but they also burnt the last drop of their power and disappeared from this world. The Lord was still as mysterious as usual in their eyes, as no one knew his or her name and no one knew that there was a new Lord. Gu Shijio also went to the Celestial Master's residence. However, no one was staying in the residence now. Initially, they had moved to the Biwu Palace, but now they were not there either. Meanwhile, everything about Di Fui had vanished as well. There was not even a footprint left in there. Gu Shijio wandered around like a wild soul and left with disappointment. She felt extremely disappointed and miserable, especially because she had no one to talk to. Everyone had forgotten about Di Fui except her. In her heart, she really wanted to find a mutual friend to talk about him, just to prove that he existed before. It would at least help to fill the enormous pit in her heart. Unfortunately, no one remembered him. She thought she should catch up with Long Sai to at least clear her doubts. Long Sai was very happy when he saw her, but he was confused when she mentioned about Di Fui. Apparently, he could not remember him either. Obviously, the world had forgotten about Di Fui. Such a great person had just disappeared, to the extent that no one could even remember his name. Gu Shijio did not stay long in the Tianwen clan. She left very quickly even though Long Sai asked her to stay a while longer. Understandably, Gu Shijio was frustrated. She wanted to find anything related to Di Fui, even if it was just a phrase or a word. However, nothing was found. She wandered around the continent with disappointment for half a day and finally recalled a place. The Crystal Palace in the deep sea. As the palace was deep in the sea, perhaps there was something left in there. It was an easy task for her to dive into the deep sea based on her current level of Kung Fu. Gu Shijio returned to the Crystal Palace in a brief period. The Crystal Palace was still standing majestically, just like a beautiful dream which carried Gu Zijia's little hope. That was the most sacred home Di Fui and Gu Shijio shared. He prepared her bridal chamber in there, they cuddled and made love in there, and he walked every single corner together with her while holding her hand. The palace was still there, and it still looked as spectacular as before. However, all the poems engraved by Di Fui had disappeared. Even the words she carved on the corals, trees, and rails had partially disappeared. Whichever word that was related to his name was now an empty space. Gu Shijio had engraved both of their names on a coral before with an arrow that poked through a heart. It was the arrow from a cupid. However, everything was left there now except the name she was looking for. She did not give up and continued to wander around. However, she got more disappointed the more she looked. Di Fui. The heavenly law was unfair. How could he have vanished this way without even a name left in this world? She slowly walked to the garden and saw the two rocking chairs. Suddenly, she had a blur vision as if she saw Di Fui sitting on the rocking chair and smiling to her. He even opened his arms and she heard a voice. "Baby, come to me." She began to tear as she looked at him. "Di Fui, you're here?" She rushed forward as she wanted to hug him. She wanted to crash into his embrace, to feel his warmth, to feel his presence. Sadly, she crashed into the rocking chair. Di Fui was gone. All she could feel was the backrest of the rocking chair. The backrest of the chair was as cold as her heart. She slowly sat on the rocking chair which Di Fui used to sit in and began to hug the backrest as if she was searching for his odor. It was a certainty that she would encounter another disappointment. Di Fui was once a lively and compelling person, but nothing about him was left in the world when he immortalized. She was the only one who remembered him, and to make matters worse, she could never see him again. She lied down and looked at the starry sky, fixing her gaze on the biggest star. Slowly, her vision got blurry, and she realized it was tear forming on her eye when she rubbed it. Coldly, she looked at her hand. She covered her eyes, but the tears still penetrated the gaps between her fingers. Being arrogant and independent, Gu Shijio was used to sobbing quietly when she had to cry. The tears were overflowing this time, just like the disappointment in her heart. After several days of anxiety and disappointment, she finally collapsed. She could not hold her emotions together anymore in this empty palace. She let go and cried, "Di Fui, I hate you. Di Fui, you come out and see me. Di Fui, I'm hurt. Look, the dragon bit my arm, it's painful. You must come out and take a look." She rolled up her sleeve and exposed the flesh on her arm. However, the one who used to care about her would not appear anymore. Regardless of whether she was injured or dying, the one she wanted to see would never show up again. There were a million stars in the sky tonight, but the one she wanted to see was not there anymore. Gu Shijio consumed all of her energy crying her tears out, and her voice even caused the palace to tremor lightly. The plants swayed and even teared as she cried. The wind blew in the palace, and her dress was fluttering. She felt even more lonely now. She had no idea how long she had been crying. She only knew that she began to feel dizzy and had a headache. She realized her voice was hoarse when she finally stopped crying. Then she looked at the sky again. The shadow of Di Fui was swaying in the sky and slowly disappeared. Suddenly, a terrifying thought occurred to her. It seemed that her memories of Di Fui were getting clouded. Initially, it was very clear, but she realized something was wrong in her mind, as if something was trying to rub away her memories of Di Fui. Immediately, she felt a cold sensation on her limbs. Would she forget about him? No way. She did not want the world to forget about him. She did not want to forget about him either. If she forgets about him, then he would be completely gone. Di Fui had done so much for her. He had done so much for her world. How could he disappear this way? She wanted to keep his memories. She struggled to get up and pulled out a short knife. She ran toward a huge rock and began to carve his name, Ifui. This name was both pleasing and torturing to her. Every single stroke on the rock felt like strokes on her heart. Surprisingly, the three characters immediately disappeared once she finished carving them, as if there was an invisible hand always ready to wipe his name off. How could it be? Not even his name. What evil things had he done that the heavenly order had to treat him this way? Gu Shijio was extremely mad, so she continued to carve his name again. Di Fui Huang Tuesday. These two names had already left a mark on her soul. It was wiped off every single time she was done carving them. She used her spiritual power to carve his name, and even bit her fingertips and used her blood to write it. It did not work. These two names seemed to have become taboo in this world. No matter what strategy she used, she would watch disappointedly as the names disappeared. Di Fui, how can I keep your memories? What should I do to keep something about you in this world? She idled in front of the huge rock and suddenly had an idea. She quickly used the knife and carved a poem. One has gone after he has done his part without leaving any footprint as proof. She held her breath and waited for a while after she was done carving the poem. It was still there. The poem did not disappear. Awesome. She would just continue to carve this poem. She was slightly more energetic now and began to carve the poem everywhere in the palace. For hours later, the entire crystal palace was covered by this poem. She even made the two characters Fu and E more prominent than the rest. In the end, she looked at the poem as she sat on the rocking chair. One has gone after he has done his part without leaving any footprint as proof. She seemed to have been inspired. Di Fui, did you get this nickname for what would happen today? She lifted her chin and laughed. Di Fui, you already knew you would have this ending, didn't you? It's so cool that you've left. But you left me alone in this world. Di Fui, I hate you. I hate you. If there is an afterlife, I'd rather not know you. She teared as she laughed, looking at the big seven-colored star in the sky as she sat on the rocking chair alone. No one in this world would look at the stars with her anymore. No one would ever hug her in his embrace when she fell asleep. She sang softly. Karma is the reason for obsession. Sadness will turn into someone's taboo, and you could never hold it when time slipped away. The promises we made 10 years ago disappeared as the 4 seasons repeated every year. She was exhausted. The saddest thing was she got nothing in return even though she has gone through so many hassles. Finally, she fell asleep. The firmament stone on her wrist, who pretended to be dead, finally shone. Master, Di Fui did not know everything about the world. He certainly did not know that he would vanish after he immortalized. Master, this is the deal between Di Fui and the Heavenly Order. He willingly to take all the punishments because he wanted to resurrect you earlier and prevent you from being punished. The Heavenly Order would not punish you, but everything about Di Fui will be vanished, including all his credits. Everyone wants to leave something in this world, even if it was a bad mark. It was good as long as people remember them. Sadly, he couldn't leave anything here. Master, you shouldn't hate him, the firmament stone quietly explained on behalf of Di Fui. Master, forget about him. You will soon forget all the memories you have with him. Keeping the memories would only make you suffer. Master, you're always an uncontrollable variable in the eyes of Heavenly Order. In fact, you should have forgotten about him since you came out of the Forbidden Land. I didn't expect you to remember him still. Anyway, it wouldn't be too long now as it's impossible for you to fight against the heavenly laws. Have a good sleep, you will be a new person when you wake up, and you won't remember this painful experience anymore. The firmament stone was glowing in 7 colors to protect Gu Shijio, who was in a deep sleep. Gu Shijio had no idea how long she had been out. Perhaps it was 1 whole day or just a few hours. Some movements awakened her. My lord! My lord! The sound penetrated her brain like magic and traveled into her mind to wake her up. She slowly opened her eyes. Gu Shijio looked a little slow-witted as she fixed her eyes at the starry sky. Slowly, she sat up and shifted her gaze to the 4 people who knelt in front of her. Those were the 4 messengers, the guardians of the Lord. She then scanned around the surrounding. She frowned as she wondered why she was there alone. Which crystal palace was she in at the moment? Who built it? She felt dizzy and slowly got up as she pressed both sides of her forehead with her fingers. Mu Feng heaved a sigh of relief as she got up. My lord, it's too cold here. It's better for you to get on the shore. Gu Shijio nodded in acknowledgement. Indeed, her entire body was freezing. However, she had the habit of familiarizing herself wherever she went. Therefore, she walked around the place and read all the words written there. Suddenly, she was stunned as she stopped in front of a huge rock. She softly read the words. One has gone after he has done his part without leaving any footprint as a proof. She frowned as she could recognize her own handwriting. Besides that, she had written a long poem. Was she under a spell when she did so? Why would she do so? Her gaze stopped at the character, Fu Yi, and her heart ached when she read it. Instantly, she felt a shadow flash across her mind. Unfortunately, it disappeared soon enough when she wanted to focus on it. Nonetheless, the ache in her heart did not disappear. Suddenly, she realized that her eyes were as swollen as 2 walnuts. Apparently, she cried before she passed out. She also had a sore throat, and she remembered her voice was hoarse when she spoke earlier. She was wondering how she could cry to the extent her eyes were swollen this way. It felt like she has been crying her heart out, but why? In fact, she still remembered that she cried, but she could not recall the reason. Again, her gaze stopped at the poems. She remembered herself trying her best to carve the poems before she fell asleep, as if she wanted to remind herself about something. Gu Shijio then noticed her fingers and saw that there was a relatively fresh blood stain. Besides that, she also realized there were some words on the rocks written with blood. Initially, she felt those words were too messy and wanted to remove some. However, she was somehow drawn to the words, and it kept affecting her emotions. Instead of erasing the poems, she applied some cream on her fingers, and they healed almost immediately. "Why am I here?" she asked Mu Feng with a hoarse and calm voice. Mu Feng heaved a sigh of relief. "My lord, you have been acting a little strange since you returned from the Forbidden Land with the purple cloud mushrooms. You couldn't stop searching for someone, and then you rushed out from the Biwu Palace. Who was I looking for?" Gu Shijio wondered. She remembered that she wanted to find someone so badly, but she could not recall who. Mu Feng stumbled as he forgot about the name of the person Gu Shijio wanted to find. Therefore, he answered, "I guess it was just an illusion from the Forbidden Land. You didn't mention a name." Gu Shijio did not continue asking after that. "So, who built this?" Gu Shijio asked. Mu Feng shook his head. "It's too old. I guess some ancient people should have built it?" Gu Shijio also recognized those designs and displays belonged to some ancient civilization. Her gaze stopped at the two rocking chairs as if she saw a couple leaning next to each other lovingly. She was shocked by the sudden image. Sadly, the vivid memory was gone before she could even see it properly. Her heart ached again involuntarily at the thought of it. Was the Crystal Palace the home of a couple? Perhaps they used to look at the stars here? Both of them must be powerful people, otherwise they would not be able to build such an amazing stargazing platform. She took a stroll in the Crystal Palace and saw a phrase of 4 words in one of the hall, Tianchang Dijio. It was a combination of Di Fuyus and Gu Zijius names. Certainly, she recognized her handwriting. She even remembered that she came here before, but she could not remember who her companion was. She felt that she had lost part of her memories. She shifted her gaze back to the 4 characters and felt that the character Jiu referred to herself. How about Di? Was that referring to the emperor? Did I fall in love with an emperor? She was frightened by the thought of it. However, she shook her head to dismiss the idea. Emperors were never her cup of tea. She could not imagine falling in love with an emperor. Gu Shijio continued walking and arrived at the doorstep in front of the main entrance. Again, she saw a bizarre word. She saw her name carved on the right. There was an arrow of a cupid drawn on the left, but it was blank on the other side of the arrow. She could recognize that she was the one who drew it. She understood the meaning of the drawing as she came from the modern world. However, she just could not believe that she could be so childish and desperate to have a life companion that she would draw something like that. Since she had drawn it, there must be a person who she had in mind at the time. Why did she struggle to remember? She frowned as she fixed her eyes on the heart. She heard a conversation in her head. Why did you draw a heart with an arrow penetrating through it? You have no idea, right? This is an arrow from the love Cupid. Couples who are struck by the arrow will love each other forever. But I feel as if an arrow is penetrating my heart. This conversation suddenly crept into her mind. However, it was extremely soft and unclear. She knew it was a conversation from 2 people, but she could not identify their gender. Gu Shijio wanted to find out more, but soon enough it disappeared again. Was this all an illusion from entering the Forbidden Land? Or did it happen in reality before? Mu Feng was growing impatient, hence, he bowed and reported, "My lord, there was a piece of news from the Haoyue Kingdom saying someone claimed himself as a Heaven's Gift disciple. Could you please verify him?" "Fine, work is the priority." The flowers and leaves wilted as the ground was covered in snow. Gu Shijio returned to the Biwu Palace again after being absent for half a year. Subconsciously, she hated that place. Gu Shijio had traveled directly to the Haoyue Kingdom to test the self-proclaimed Heaven's Gift disciple. However, the result was disappointing. Mu Feng advised her according to the rules that she should put that person into the dark forest after dissolving his spiritual power. Subconsciously, she was irritated by that task. What kind of rules are these? Why are there so many rules? Being the rebellious woman that she is, she put that person into the dark forest without removing his spiritual power. She then returned to the Biwu Palace after solving the issue. However, she felt frustrated and depressed in there and then left after staying for only half a day. She had no idea what she wanted to do. She had been traveling around as if there was a hole inside her heart, which made her feel empty to the extent she lost her passion in everything. Mu Feng, I remember you said it's always spring all year round in the Biwu Palace? She randomly asked as she noticed snowflakes on her dress and hair. Mu Feng smiled awkwardly. Indeed, that used to be the case. However, this year seems to be slightly different. In fact, the cold breeze had been howling for almost half a year. This strange occurrence was not limited to the Biwu Palace. The weather of the entire continent was also strange. Half a year ago, it was summer. However, they had an early fall as the leaves began to fall since June. The temperature started to fall every day since then. Soon enough, everywhere was covered in snow. Snowflakes continued to fall on Gu Zijia's face as she lifted her chin and looked at the sky. She would not feel the cold anymore due to her current level of spiritual power. She merely sat down on a stone bench and continued admiring the snow. Mu Feng was observing her as he waited somewhere nearby. Gu Shijio had not initiated any wizardry barriers, hence, the snow fell on her freely but did not melt at all. She was sitting there silently as if she was a snow sculpture. Gu Shijio was now carrying a strong cold aura with her. The temperature of her surroundings would drop automatically wherever she visited. In fact, Mu Feng suspected the Lord's emotion was the reason for the strange weather all over the continent. However, he did not dare to tell her. After all, it was winter at that moment, hence, it was normal for it to be cold. A pair of cranes were hunting for food nearby. Perhaps, it was too cold as they began to cuddle to warm each other up. Gu Shijio narrowed her eyes as she hated to see anything in pairs now. A strong force was formed as she lifted her arm and moved toward the cranes. Both of the cranes immediately flew away as they were frightened. Mu Feng was speechless. The Lord indeed had a very strange temper recently. She hated anything that was lovey-dovey. Therefore, Mu Feng and the other messengers tried to avoid showing up in pairs in front of the Lord to avoid irritating her. Everything seemed normal besides that. Gu Shijio had become the true Lord and began to execute her responsibilities. She remembered that she used to look up to those great people who were at the highest positions. Now, she has become the most powerful person on the continent, and all the citizens even knelt and greeted her. Everyone respected her and built temples for her. That was supposed to be the peak of her entire life, but she did not feel happy at all. She could not even feel her emotions. As she traveled around the continent, she only felt lonely even despite witnessing all the beautiful scenery. Perhaps, that was precisely what she had to experience when she became the most powerful person in the continent. Gu Shijio still felt that a big piece of her heart was missing, hence, she was wandering around the continent over the past 6 months trying to find some answers. She did not only wander around the Saha world but also visited Hell and the Monster Kingdom. All 3 realms were very different from each other with unusual phenomena. Unfortunately, she was not impressed at all. Subconsciously, she was looking for something, but she had no idea what it was. She even visited a few of her friends, such as Long Sai from the Tianwen clan, Qian Lingyu from the Haoyue Kingdom, Lan Weihu and Yan Chen, Li Mengxia, and many more. She had been to many places but still could not find anything worth searching for. No matter who she met, she still could not feel anything, as if she subconsciously distanced herself from others. "Master, I think something is wrong. Are you sick?" The firmament stone began to approach her again. Gu Shijio was too lazy to respond. She was a physician after all. Certainly she would know if she was physically ill. The firmament stone had been talking to her very often recently and even persuaded her to be more courteous to others. In fact, it thought she was suffering from depression. In fact, she did not intend to commit suicide but thought her life was too long and boring. Master, there are many more spells you have yet to learn. Why don't you go to the study room? There are plenty of secret scrolls in there. The firmament stone tried to find something for her to do. Gu Shijio had nothing to lose, hence, she went to the study room. The study room remained the same, but she fixed her gaze at the two chairs behind the table. Suddenly, she seemed to have seen two people sitting on the chairs. One was reading and another one was writing. It was such a lovely moment. The one who was reading seemed to have a question and asked the one who was writing. The one who was writing wrapped his arms around the one who was reading and began to explain. The one who was reading then wrapped her arms around the man and kissed his chin. Gu Shijio held her breath as she suddenly felt a familiar heartache. She knew it could be an illusion as she often saw these images. However, it used to appear only for a very short time and disappeared in a blink of an eye. She could not see the people clearly, but she felt it was the same two people. Strangely, the illusion stayed slightly longer this time. It was probably around 10 seconds. Although it was still a blurred scene, she subconsciously knew that it was a man and a lady. My lord. Mu Feng reminded her as she was idling in front of the doorstep. She paused a little, then the illusion immediately disappeared. Abruptly, she asked Mu Feng, "Did I fall in love with someone before?" Mu Feng scratched his head. "I'm not sure." In fact, he did realize he had forgotten about something, but he could not recall what exactly it was. He paused for a moment as if he recalled something. My lord, you were once in love with the overlord of the Tianwen clan, and the relationship seemed to be good. Gu Shijio frowned as she certainly remembered something between her and Long Sai. However, part of the memories between the two of them was missing too. Many of the interactions between Gu Shijio and Long Sai involved Di Fui, hence, it was normal for her to forget part of it as everything related to Di Fui had vanished. She frowned and pondered as her gaze stopped at the two chairs again. Were the two people Long Sai and herself? She somehow felt that her obsession was to find out the real identity of these two persons. She left swiftly after stuffing a scroll into her storage space. Mu Feng quickly followed. My lord, where are you going? Gu Shijio remained silent. She was the lord. She had no obligation to reveal everything to her subordinates. Certainly, she would use the directed audio spell to contact them if she needed anything. Mu Feng sighed as he watched her disappear into the snow. The lord liked to be alone. She would only contact them when there was something important. Mu Feng was concerned as he looked at the snow out there. It was already February, and the spring buds should be growing by now. However, the weather was still freezing cold, and there was no sign that the ice would melt soon. The sound of a flute lingered around the world. It was amazing. Gu Shijio was standing on a big tree watching a white-robed man playing the flute. The man was charming. He was standing there alone as if he was the most beautiful creature in the world. There was a big lake somewhere nearby which would never be frozen regardless of how cold the weather could be. The water was moving and splashed against the wall of the shore. It was scenic. However, Gu Shijio suddenly saw that the man changed into a set of purple robes, though she could not see him clearly at the time. The man lifted his head as he heard something, and Gu Shijio was anxious. She suddenly saw a fox-eyes headband, very long black hair, and a smile that had no competition. Certainly, that was an illusion again as it almost disappeared instantly. Suddenly, she saw a man in front of her. This person was surprised. Shijio. Gu Shijio was slightly disappointed. She leaped and landed onto the ground. Instructor Long, you're very free today, huh? Long Sai smiled with a pair of beautiful eyes. I'm free every day, so you're always welcomed, Shijio. Long Sai prepared a tableful of dishes for her under a tree. They toasted to each other. However, she did not have any special feeling even though Long Sai tried to impress her. She could still feel the loneliness she used to have, and that made her even more disappointed. Gu Shijio wanted to get to the bottom of everything. Hence, she got Long Sai to play the flute as she was kind of into it at that moment. Long Sai placed the flute under his lower lip and said with a loving gaze, Shijio, I haven't listened to you sing for ages. Why don't I play a song for you to sing along to? Gu Shijio did not reject. Perhaps, singing could help to relieve her negative emotions. This time, Long Sai played a song which both of them were familiar with, Ji Jian Sha by the Legend of the Phoenix. I remembered you urged me to get onto the horseback as you played the lute under the moonlight in Jiangnan that year. You wanted to stay as you never wanted me to miss you even because you knew that I loved you. You told me fate was like the sands between our fingers. We need to let it go. Regardless of the 4 seasons, I will spend the rest of my life going through all lives' struggles with you. The song was lingering around the forest as the sound of the flute was pretty clear. It could be considered a perfect piece from both of them. Suddenly, Gu Shijio felt the scene was very familiar. All of a sudden, she saw a man floating in the lake. The man had very long hair and was floating on the surface of the water. He was in a red robe as he fixed his eyes on her. She could not see his eyes or even his features, but she could strangely feel the sadness in his eyes. Her heart pumped rapidly as she rushed toward the lake. She was fast, however. She realized there was nothing but cold water when she jumped into the lake. Long Sai was shocked by her actions. He asked as he looked at Gu Shijio, who was still in the lake. Shijio, are you all right? What's in there? Gu Shijio was now depressed as she knew it was an illusion again. She shook her head. Nothing much, it's so hot I just want to take a splash. In fact, she was frustrated and almost burst into tears. She lifted her chin and looked to the sky. It was cloudy, and snowflakes fell on her lashes as well as her face. It made her eyes red. She then rubbed her eyes and squeezed out some water. She frowned as she thought something was wrong with her eyes. In fact, she often tears for no reason as she usually woke up with a pair of wet eyes and a pain in her chest. Fortunately, she was now in the water, so Long Sai could not differentiate it was water or her tears. Long Sai was still watching her. She did not use any of her spiritual power, hence, her hair and her face were wet. She was still looking at the sky even though the snowflakes were falling on her face, which made her look pitiful and lonely. He was a little sad as he liked her since long time ago. She was not attached to anyone, but he never heard that she liked anyone too. The saddest part was that she always tried to distance herself from others as though she was waiting for someone, that made it more difficult for others to walk into her heart. He thought of following her around. However, her kung fu was way more powerful now, and she could just appear and leave instantly to the extent he could not catch up. Therefore, he could only passively wait for her arrival. Suddenly, he began to play the flute again. It was Yi Ren Hong Zhuang by Maisie. The lovebirds were busy singing together in a pair. Certainly, Gu Shijio knew this song too, as the lyrics just automatically flashed across her mind. People said if a loving couple could not be together forever, it was also good to spend some time together. Though it was not possible to make it work again, there was a chance to meet in their dreams. She asked herself who was the one she wanted to give the handkerchief with a pair of mandarin ducks. Gu Shijio did not sing along but returned to the shore after soaking herself in the water for a while. Of course, her clothes were dried the moment she got onto the shore. She leaned against the chair as she listened to Long Sai play. She felt some familiarities. She somehow felt she has once experienced the same thing with someone else. The man was playing the flute as well. Strangely, she saw a man in a purple robe playing the flute in front of her, and a lady leaned against his back with her arms wrapped around his waist. Instructor Long, do you like to wear purple clothes? The song ended abruptly. Long Sai paused for a moment and shook his head. He did not like purple clothes and subconsciously hated this color. However, Shijio, would you like me to wear a purple robe? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.